Hi, I'm Mary Bukavalis from What's My Scene magazine, and I'm with Isaac and Laurie. Laurie?
Laurie.
From UK band Slaves. I wanted to go right back to the start and just ask you, who were your influences growing up?
Grew up with a lot of punk music and reggae music mostly around the house. My dad's like a big vinyl collector, so like everything really, anything and everything.
I think mine were like purely sort of guitar based, so like I sort of wanted to be a guitarist more than even in a band, so I was just really into like all the classics from like John Frusciante, Tom Morello, Slash, Jimmy Page, kind of just all the big classic guitar stuff. I was just really into that and like learning how to play those songs, and that's where I started.
Yeah. Have you ever met any of those heroes of yours?
Mick Jones from The Clash.
I love The Clash.
I think, like out of guitarists, is probably like one of the only guitarists I've actually met.
And I'm sure he would have lived up to your expectations. He's such a lovely guy.
Yeah.
How do you feel now when people come up to you, fans come up to you and say that you influenced them?
It's like
surreal, isn't it? It's just so.
There's a band in Detroit who have started, they started playing because they liked our band.
Fantastic.
They play like the same setup as us. So to see people actually like starting to form their own bands and getting recognition and saying that we're the reason they did it, it's crazy.
Yeah, it makes it all feel worth it.
Yeah, that's right. That's fantastic. And how did you two get together in the band?
We met just sort of on the local gig scene in Kent, where we're both from.
Isaac was a local legend.
Was he?
Isaac was like years ahead of everyone else. Like when YouTube was still in its infancy, and it was hard to understand how you could get a video on the internet. Like Isaac already had a video on the internet with like mates who made up your own music, and it just seemed so that seemed so far out of my reach. But we grew apart like almost like a couple of hours apart in the same county, so then we ended up meeting on the gig scene later on.
That's great. And when you did form your band, why did you decide on the name Slaves?
I think that's the hardest bit about starting a band, thinking of a name, and we were just racking our brains for so long, and then one day Laurie just knocked on my door and was just like, the Slaves, and I was like, slaves, and we were like, yep. It just sounds brash. It sounds brash.
It's that sort of that sort of feeling of coming from a small town and just being told what to do your whole life, and just that teenage youthful rebellion against that. And it just when you list punk bands, they all seem to have that quite abrasive single word, and it just fitted into our ethos completely.
Everyone's a slave to something.
Yeah, definitely. And if you weren't doing music, what would you be doing?
I reckon I'd either be working with animals somehow, or I'd be doing care work, because that's what I did before we got signed, and I really felt quite passionately about it.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I'd be tattooing, I reckon. And I would like to say I'd be a fine artist, but I think that's too ambitious. I was probably being in a band's allowed me to be more creative and people take you more seriously. But before I was just being a tattooist, so I think that's where I would have ended up.
Yeah. Did you design any of the tattoos you've got?
Really early on, I would bring drawings to my mate Steve, who's actually here with us.
Yeah.
And he would redraw them and tattoo them on me. And then after a while I just got to the point where I just like getting another artist's work. So now I'm not actually that fussy about what I get, it's more about who's doing it.
Right. That's good. Are you just going to do any in Australia? There's a lot of great tattooers.
Well, the guy that's tattooed the side of my head and my chest and my neck actually is Australian, and he's moved back here, so I'm hoping to get tattooed by him on Tuesday. Matty Diorenzo, you've got to look him up.
Now, when you said earlier about everyone's a slave to something, and when I listen to your music and lyrics, that's the sense I get too. Before you actually come up, do you come up with the lyrics first and then beats and the rhythm?
I feel like we both kind of write quite a lot separately, and then we get in a room together, and it's kind of just like a clash of like creative ideas.
Yeah.
So like we've both constantly got like notes on our phone with like ideas for lyrics and guitar stuff, and
Yeah.
Lots of the songs, like the more we write, are sort of like conceptual ideas where one of us might say, I want to write a song about this. So the idea gets birthed together, and then Isaac will go away and like fill out the lyrics.
Yeah.
On a lot of the recent albums, like the past two albums, the lyrics don't really get finished until the studio. Like we almost have the song, and then you're changing them up until the last minute.
yeah, I'm a proper perfectionist.
Yeah. I do love the lyrics. And what concept do you think this latest album has?
I think the latest album's kind of more introverted. It's more, I feel like before we've kind of just been like shouting about everything that's wrong with the world, whereas this one's kind of like taking a long hard look at yourself.
And I think the broader context was also subversive pop music. Like we made it sound consciously more radio friendly, but the things we were talking about were still just the same, but we just did it in a way that it's not as obvious, and like some people might choose to say that it's not as meaningful, but it's just you've got to see the meaning. We wanted to make music to infiltrate the masses rather than...
Well, that definitely worked with Cheer Up London.
Yeah.
You know, you got the happy title, etc., and then I love the lyrics.
Cheers.
And I feel like tomorrow, you know, in the pit, I'll be screaming and chanting "You're dead already."
Yeah.
How did that inspiration come about?
We'd like just moved to London, and I remember literally walking around the underground, and I was just baffled by the way that no one was engaging like eye contact or conversation, or just like everyone's just like in their own little world. Like it's a weird place, to London Underground. And I remember literally walking around with my girlfriend at the time and just being like, cheer up London. It's just like it became a little like phrase that I would always say when I was in the underground.
Yeah.
Cheer up London.
Love it.
And then we got in the practice room and then just wrote the song. And first we thought it was like a bit too like stupid.
It was a joke song.
It was a joke song, but then we came back to it the next day and we were like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's very good. I'll just go through a few of the songs which I really liked, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit about where they came from. The whole album's great, by the way.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Is it true that a teacher once told you there's no such thing as hate, just acts of fear and love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
And do you still, because the song basically says how you felt at that time, but do you still feel that it's indicative of the world around us now?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of like hate is just fear.
Yeah.
And like that's really like stuck with me, that saying.
And like writing that album's been really cathartic, because like everything Isaac says, like I'm the first person to hear it and maybe pass judgment on it. And now when someone looks at you in the street or laughs at you or bullies or whatever, I just have a different perspective on it now, that actually they're the unhappy ones. And I think that all stems within that statement of fear and love. Like all the people projecting the hatred are usually the people that are like
they're scared. It's the small-minded people, like the homophobic people, the racists. Like they're all just like small-minded and like fearful of what they don't know.
So you pity them rather than fear them.
It's a good way to look at it. With lives they wish they had, I feel like it's really a perfect reflection today, social media, etc. Is that what you were hoping to portray, or did it come from another event? Or
that song is definitely just a look at the world today. Just like everything, it didn't happen unless it's on Instagram. Like everyone does everything for online gratification these days, and that song is just basically trying to capture that.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel that even though you've got about the troubles of the world, or that you are sort of telling people how you see them or their actions, there's also a little bit of positivity where you help them out a bit, give them a bit of advice.
Yeah, I think like Laurie always said, I feel like with this album it's kind of like we kind of wanted to offer a bit of a solution rather than like just always talking about what's wrong. It's like, okay, do that, but then maybe offer like some words of like advice, or like, and it's to
it really
ourselves
comes
as well.
through, yeah.
All the songs in which we're like, we might sound like we're like slagging people off or shouting about people, it's usually, it reflects on us as well, like the lives they wish they had. Like we all do that.
I take pictures of my food.
Yeah.
Do you?
I do. It's like I like to send it to my girlfriend because she we both love food, so I send her photos of what I'm eating. And every time I do it, I think I like look at him, like imagining that he's like judging me about it. But I don't care because like I want to send her pictures of my food.
But you don't post it on Instagram?
If you know,
sometimes when it's
maybe a fancy pastry or something, you might get a look in.
We might get some in Melbourne that you post a coffee or something.
And then, if I take it on my 35mm camera, then obviously it's validated another level.
Yeah.
It's art. It's all
that's
so.
alright, I think.
Yeah, but that's the thing. And then we've like developed this construct that it's all right if it's this, and it's like the layers to it are quite funny. But we're part of it. We're victims of it as well.
Victims,
we're
definitely.
fully involved.
And that brings me to Photo Opportunity. How did that come about?
That was the first song that we started writing for this newest album.
Like, I play riffs and I'm like, this will never be a Slave song, but I just sit there, and then like that one, like, I just started singing along to it, and I was like, are we really making this song? It's so not like what we normally do.
Yeah. And I feel like that song is just kind of about, you know, we're far from like famous or whatever, but you do get people coming up to you and asking you for photos, and like maybe at inappropriate times when I'm like trying to have dinner with my mum or something.
Which is highlighted even more again by what people constitute fame as now is so much smaller than what it used to be because of social media.
Yeah.
Like if anyone gets like a moment in the spotlight, they become this target to take selfies with, and that human interaction gets like distorted into this really grim thing.
Yeah, it's mad. I guess that song is just kind of about that and just how I was feeling at the time with like all our kind of like success or whatever, or how my life feels now. Because it's definitely different to how it was. It's just like a sort of a look on that. It's like almost like a day in the life of.
That's great. I love it.